Countries are, in some ways, like living things. They come into existence in various ways, maybe through wars, revolution, colonization, referendum, or some other means. They grow. Some become big superpowers. Some are regional superpowers, whether economically, militarily, or both. Some develop ambitions of their own and pursue their own interests. They respond to their environments by engaging with other countries around the world, whether it's by launching wars, imposing trade tariffs to counter perceived economic imbalance.
We're going to protect those companies with strong tariffs because I'm a believer in tariff
diplomacy. And sadly, like many living things, they die. Or at least, they cease to exist in the way, shape, and form that we once knew them. In this video, we take a trip into history to talk about some countries we knew of, but which, for one reason or the other, they no longer exist. Please follow along. Abyssinia was a territory that encompassed the present-day territories of Ethiopia and Eritrea and parts of Somalia in the Horn of Africa region. This territory was synonymous with the Ethiopian Empire that existed up until 1974, when the modern state of Ethiopia came into being after the revolution that resulted in the abolition of the monarchy of King Haile Selassie. Eritrea would eventually declare independence in 1993, after a bitter war of independence with Ethiopia. Today, what we remember as Abyssinia is largely the present territories of Ethiopia and Eritrea. Yugoslavia was a country in southern Europe that existed from 1918 to 1992. The country was an offshoot of the Balkans War of 1912 to 1913. It was a loose confederation of 6 constituent republics, otherwise called socialist republics: Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, and Slovenia. These constituents operated mostly as autonomous regions, enjoying high degrees of independence, but still bound to the central government. At its prime, Yugoslavia was a military power in Europe, with a population of about 24 million as at 1991. For much of its existence, the country was ruled by this man, Josip Broz Tito, also known as Marshal Tito. Tito wielded enormous power at the central level, pretty much keep everyone in check and everything in order. With Tito's death in 1980, the leadership vacuum created was exploited by power-hungry regional leaders across the republics to stoke ethnic tensions among their populations. This, along with the rise of nationalist sentiments, massive inflation, general economic decline, and the gradual fall of communism across Europe, pushed the republics to explore their individual paths forward as independent countries. The death of Yugoslavia as we knew it started in 1991, with the declaration of independence by Slovenia, Croatia, and Macedonia. Bosnia will follow in 1992, after a brutal civil war. At this time, what was left of Yugoslavia was merely a union of Serbia and Montenegro. Montenegro would declare its independence in 2006, leaving the union with Serbia. Today, what was once Yugoslavia is now the independent countries of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, and Slovenia. After the fall of Nazi Germany at the end of the Second World War in 1945, the Allied powers of Soviet Union, United States, Great Britain, and France were not sure of how to handle what was left of the German territory as a country. It was not until the Potsdam Conference of 1945 that some form of agreement was reached on the state of Germany. Just so you know, wars typically have consequences, and often, the victors would decide the fate of the vanquished. Also, the overarching idea was that the German economy was in total collapse from the brutal war, and the government, or what was left of it, was in shambles. It became imperative to create some sort of stability that would ease the transition to a new, post-war, post-Nazi German state. And so it was decided by the Allied powers to divide Germany into 4 zones, each to be occupied by one Allied power of USA, Great Britain, France, and the Soviet Union. The Soviets took the eastern portion, the Americans, the southern portion. The northern portion went to the Brits, and the southwestern corridor went to the French. Similarly, the city of Berlin was divided into 4 sectors, one for each Allied power. It was also agreed that these territories would be united in future. But this arrangement turned out to be more complicated in reality, as the Soviets and other Allied powers seemed to favor different approaches on how to administer their respective territories. Issues like the settlement of reparations, transition to democracy, formation of political parties and elections, economic plans, and all that created deep mistrust among the powers. The territories apportioned to USA, Britain, and France decided to merge to form what was like a Federal Republic of Germany without Soviet approval. The Soviets then responded by establishing a German Democratic Republic in its portion of East Germany. This move on both parts effectively gave birth to 2 separate countries, West Germany and East Germany, set on separate courses of capitalism and communism modeled after their masters.
Mr. Gorbachev. Mr. Gorbachev,
Tear down this wall.
With the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, effectively reuniting the Soviet and American sectors of the city, it was only a matter of time before the overriding Cold War sentiment necessitating the existence of East Germany would give way to what was then a sort of new world order, where communism, in all its representation, was gradually phasing out across the world. In 1990, East Germany officially reunited with the Federal Republic of Germany, closing a chapter on 45 years of division and effectively ending the Soviet creation called German Democratic Republic, or East Germany. Today, Germany is one enlarged and united country, with its capital situated at the once divided city of Berlin. The state of Czechoslovakia existed from 1918 to 1993 as a federal structure and was a relatively peaceful and prosperous country in its existence. However, due to social, political, and cultural differences among the regions, the country broke up in 1993 into two separate independent sovereign territories, Czech Republic for the Czechs and Slovakia for the Slovaks, in what was called Velvet Revolution. The beautiful thing is that, unlike other breakups, this was very peaceful, mutual, and amicable. Today, what was once Czechoslovakia is now the independent countries of Czech Republic, now called Czechia and Slovakia. The Union of Soviet Socialist Republics was a massive country that occupied much of the eastern part of Europe and Asia. In its political form, the USSR existed from 1917, after the Russian Revolution led by Vladimir Lenin, up until 1991 when it collapsed. For context, the USSR covered a land area of 22.4 meters square kilometers, about 2.5 times the size of continental United States, and about 3 times the size of Australia. It contained 11 out of 24 time zones. The USSR was ruled as a one-party state by the Communist Party, with a very centralized power structure from Moscow. There were 15 constituent states, or Soviet Socialist Republics, or SSRs: Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Estonia, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Latvia, Lithuania, Moldova, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Ukraine, Uzbekistan, and Russia. Each of these Soviet Socialist Republics had its unique ethnic configuration, but they were all subject to the ultimate central power in Moscow. In the late 80s, however, there was a gradual but certain shift in ideology away from communism and its ideals towards a capitalist and free economic system in much of Europe and around the world. The economy in the late 1980s wasn't exactly rosy, and with the decline in economic growth also came a corresponding decline in military strength. The military strength that held the Soviet republics tightly under Moscow's control was weakening, and this was clear for all to see. This presented an opportunity for these socialist republics to start considering alternative visions of a life outside of this suffocating chokehold called the USSR, one more in tune with a free market economy, Western democracy style. Between the mid to late 1980s, a series of events happened that would accelerate the end of the USSR as we knew it. Mikhail Gorbachev assumed leadership in 1985 and clearly pursues a policy of openness to the world, freedom of speech, thought, expression, and industry, restructuring, and decentralization. The Chernobyl nuclear disaster in present-day Ukraine also exposed the level of inefficiency of the central government and only exacerbated the sentiments of the people towards a more responsive and accessible government, one which the Central Soviet government had proved incapable of providing. The Berlin Wall separating the Soviet and American sectors of Berlin falls, and East Germany, a post-World War II Soviet creation, is reunited with the Federal Republic of Germany, also a creation of the Allied powers of America, Great Britain, and France. Between 1990 to 1991, after a long series of internal political maneuvering, social unrest, and public agitations, which have all become too much, each of the Soviet Socialist republics formally declared independence, becoming individual republics. This effectively closed the chapter on the USSR as a country as we knew it.